Jewish year. And we're going to begin with, we'll start from the beginning. So we're going to begin with the high holidays. And it's very interesting because we're coming up to the secular New Year right now. And one of the big questions that are asked is why don't we have, a big New Year's party on Rosh Hashanah? Why are we sitting in shul and davening all day? And because that's what traditionally people do. They celebrate the New Year's starting. Let's celebrate. Let's eat, drink, and be merry. And what people do, and this is something that is done all over, is that you make your New Year's resolution, right? So I think the top 3 resolutions will be like, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to exercise. If I, have an addiction or something that I want to break out of, this is the year that I'm going to break out of it. And then what do we do that night? We go out, we party, we eat more. We're not exercising the next day. We're drinking. We're doing just the opposite. And this is really what Rosh Hashanah is about. And that's why we're sitting in shul, and that's why we're davening. And it's not because it's this terrifying day and there's this almighty God with his scale and he's looking down on us and he's saying, you were bad, you were good, you're getting on the nice list, you're getting on the naughty list. That's not what it's about. It's really about rebooting. It's the birthday of the world, and God is rebooting the world. It's like if this was a computer program and God is the almighty programmer and he's looking down and he's saying, okay, we need to get this back on focus, we need to get this back on track. And that's happening on a macro level, but on a micro level also as the year goes along. And you all know when we make a resolution, New Year's Eve, we start off and we say, okay, I'm going to lose this amount of weight, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week, and it lasts for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 7 weeks, but it tapers off because life happens and we kind of lose focus of what's important in life. And Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of the world, and it's also the head of the year. And if you think, that's what it means, Rosh Hashanah, the head. Rosh means the head of the year. If you think about how the head works, all the functions of the body, the respiratory system, the digestive system, the reproductive system, everything has switches up here. So in order for the respiratory system to work, the respiratory switches up here have to work. In order for the reproductive system to work, the reproductive switches have to work over here. And so if you're thinking about the head of the year, this is where we're initiating every single day, moment, second, minute of our lives in that year. And it's so crucial that we get it right. It's so important that we take that time in the beginning of the year and say, these 2 days, because Rosh Hashanah is 2 days, these 2 days are what is going to connect me in August 15th. Rosh Chodesh Av, or any other day in that year is initiating right now. And I want to get that right. I want to have a meaningful year. I want every single moment of that year to be meaningful. I want it to be fulfilling. I want to be on the right track. When I'm coming to the end of the year, I can say, wow, this was a year where I was true to myself. This was a year where I had meaningful relationships. This was a year where I didn't feel like I was wandering. I didn't feel like I was lost. I was going in the right direction. And that's when you initiate it on Rosh Hashanah. And how do we do that? We're going to get to that by repentance, which doesn't really mean repentance. Teshuma means return, where we're returning to who we really are. And that's why we blow the shofar. If I say anything, I have to tell you that I love giving this class, but they asked me to teach about all the holidays in an hour. So I never know how much to get done. So I'm going to throw in words, and if you don't understand what I'm saying, please just raise your hand and let me know. But the shofar is the ram's horn that we blow on Rosh Hashanah, and that's what we're doing when we are blowing the ram's horn. We are reawakening the soul. And that's why it's very interesting, because my husband said he once heard, he was in the hospital. He went to blow the shofar for people in the hospital because it's so important that every single Jew gets to hear the shofar, no matter what state they're in or where they are. So he went to the hospital to blow the shofar, and he said the TV was on, and they were videoing a Reform synagogue, and they had this beautiful big shofar, and they were playing like a melody. It was like dun, 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 dun. It was like this whole, it was such a beautiful ceremony. It was like this beautiful song that they were playing with the shofar. But we don't do that. We really play very, very simple. It's not even playing. We're blowing very simple sounds because we're going beyond anything. We're just hitting the core of who we are. The sound is so simple. It's the essence of sound because we want to hit the essence of who we are. We want to reconnect to the essence of who we are. And that is why we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Now, coming on to Yom Kippur. Now, Yom Kippur seems like this really scary, awesome day. And it is very awesome, and it does need that respect for what the day is. And we are fasting, and we are in synagogue all day. But what we need to understand is when we talk about repentance, because we say between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur we have 10 days of repentance. And really the word repentance is it's I don't know if it's a misnomer, but if you're taking the word Teshuma, it does not really mean to repent, it really means to return. So what you're saying is that not am I saying, oh, I was a bad girl and now I kind of have to punish myself for being a bad girl. I'm saying, why was I bad? Why did I go off course? Why was I not focused on my goal? Why am I in a place where I say, hey, this is not where I want to be? Teshuvah means to return in the sense that as a Jewish person, your soul is perfect. And no matter what you do in your life, no matter where you stray, no matter where you end up, that essence, that core is connected to God in such an intrinsic level that nothing can dirty it, nothing can sully it, nothing can detach it from its godly source. You can pile on the garbage, definitely. You can totally forget about it. It can get so hidden that you don't even know that it's there. But it will never be lost, and it can never be changed. It is infinite, and it is essential to who you are, and there's nothing about it that can be changed or destroyed. And so what you just need to realize is not that, oh, this Torah and this Jewish lifestyle and this being Jewish is this thing that's so difficult for me and I'm going to have to learn it and I'm going to have to study it and it's something that is going to take me a lifetime and I will never achieve it. You have to say, in my essence, I am a Jew. I have a godly spark that is pure, and I just need to peel away all the external layers and connect to that. And once I connect to that essence of myself, it will permeate the rest of my body. It's there in its subconscious level. I'm not recognizing it consciously, but once I know that it's there and I connect to it on that subconscious, I connect to my subconscious, I can bring it out into my conscious and it can direct every single aspect of my life. I feel like you don't see me over there. I'm going to move over and try. Okay, better now? Okay, and then I can, and that's what Tshuva is. And that's also, I'm sorry, that's what Avera is when we talk about sin. When we talk, all the terminologies for Avera, for sin, are not doing something wrong. It's disconnecting. That's what it is. You have a source. By you being alive here today, that means God is connected to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And that spark is within you. And by returning to that, by getting to who you really are, then you're reconnecting. You're making all of those connections. And that's really what Teshuvah is. And that's what's going to take you through the rest of the year. And that's why we don't eat, because we're fasting and we're in a state of making the physical body a little bit uncomfortable. Because why did we lose focus? What covers up my godly soul? What covers up that connection, that essence? It's because I'm in a material body, and my material body is drawn to the material. So it wants to, it's going to go out and get the cheeseburger, or it's going to, do whatever is not what my godly soul wants. So that's what's drawing me away. So we kind of say, okay, body, today I'm focusing on my soul. There's a way to use the body in God's service, and that's the ultimate. But right now we need to reconnect. Once we can reconnect, we can bring the godly soul into the body and make the material also godly. And that's what we're going to do on Sukkot. So Sukkot is the next. It's all part of the month of Tishrei. It's all the high holidays, but this is the more fun part. And what we do is we build a temporary dwelling, which is an oxymoron, because if it's temporary, it's not really a dwelling place. A dwelling place is where you live, and if it's a dwelling place, it's not really temporary. But we manage to be confusing. So, what does it mean, a temporary dwelling place? You know, there's two stories that I'm going to tell you quickly, and then we'll kind of explain it. There was a boy, I don't know if he was from Crown Heights, but he was a Lubavitcher boy who was going out. He was going on a trip, and he wrote into the Rebbe for a blessing, for he should have success on his trip. I don't know exactly what the trip was. I don't know if it was, religious-oriented trip, but he wanted a blessing from the Rebbe for this trip. And the Rebbe responded to him and said that, in the Bible, it talks about the Jews traveled for 40 years in the desert. And once they built the Mishkan, the tabernacle, they would, wherever they went, even if they were there for one night, they set up the whole Mishkan. Now, the Mishkan, we understand that we had the temple in Jerusalem. The Mishkan was the temporary temple. That's the thing, the traveling temple. Now, the Mishkan took 8,000 people to put it together. It had so many parts and so many things. And if they stayed there for one night, they set the whole thing up. They did the whole shebang, even for one night. And the Rebbe said, no matter where you're traveling, even though you're traveling, and even though you're going through wherever you're going, you still have your mission, and you still have your focus, and you still need to. You can't just say, oh, I'm traveling through here. I don't need to bring godliness into the world. I don't need to be I don't need to be on mission now. But the same way that even though they stayed there for just one night, they built the whole Mishkan, because God needs to be brought down wherever you are. There's a second story that's brought about. It's told about a Hasidic master. I could not get the exact name. I'm sorry. But it's a story that's told. Somebody came to his house to discuss some important communal matters with him. And when he came to the house, at first he thought that he was in the wrong place. And he walks in and he started asking around, is this the house of this master? Is this the house? And they said, yes, this is it. He walks in and he looks. It's completely threadbare. There was like a plank of wood with a stump of wood underneath as a table, and it converted into a bed, and there was hardly anything there. And he tells Master, he said, I know that the physical, your physical material body is not that important, but a little bit you can have in your, this is your home, this is your... So where's your furniture? A little bit of couch, something, an end table, something. And this master looks at the man and he says, well, where's your furniture? He said, my furniture? It's at home. I'm traveling. I don't have my furniture with me. Mm-hmm. He says, oh, really? I'm also traveling. This is not my home. This is not my permanent dwelling place. This is the world that I'm passing through, but this is not my home. Mm-hmm. So this gives us a little bit of an insight into what temporary dwelling is. What are we commemorating on Sukkot? On Sukkot, we were traveling through the desert, and God, this was after we were freed from Egypt. God took us through the desert to bring us to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and He shielded us, and He provided us with food, and we were completely dependent on God. There was no way that we would have survived this trek through the wilderness without the clouds of glory and without the manna of heaven. We were not working and providing for ourselves. We were completely dependent on God. And that's what we have to recognize, that no matter if we build our 5-story mansions and we have our, top-level corporate jobs, it's really not us. It can disappear like that. It's a temporary thing, and it's something that God gives to us. But even though we are here, we have to make every single moment count. So it is temporary, but it is a dwelling because we are here and we are changing the world as we're going through it. And that brings us to Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah is called the rejoicing of the Torah. And what happens is every single week of the year, on Shabbos, we read a portion in the Torah. And at this point of the year, we're finishing the last book, and we're starting again from Bereshis. We never finish Torah. Every time we learn through the Torah, we uncover a deeper level and a deeper level and a deeper level. So if you live 90 years, if you live 100 years, if you live 120 years, you're going to hear the Torah portions 100 times, 120 times, and every single time you're going to hear it, you're going to hear a new insight. You're going to hear something new. I have given this speech, I think, for the last 3 yeshivacations. And every time I prepare, I learn something new. I really do. There's like, last night I'm reading something and I said, oh, okay, I didn't say that last time. Will I have time to say it this time? But there really is a new dimension every single time you go through it. Now, what's very interesting about Simchas Torah is, you would think if we're discussing the rejoicing of the Torah, we just finished Torah, we should sit down and we should open up the Torah and we should discuss it and we should say, what did we learn new this year? And I learned this and you learned that, and let's put it together, and what are we going to learn further? We don't do that. If anything, we learn even less in Simchas Torah. What do? We roll up the Torahs, we put the velvet parochas on it, the covering, everybody gets one, and it gets passed around, and you dance around in a circle, and you dance, and you dance, and you dance, and you dance with it, and it's beautiful, and it's uplifting, and it's spiritual, but if you're saying, we're celebrating the Torah, open it up, read what it has to say. Why are you dancing with it? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? So throughout the whole year, you are connecting to the Torah by trying to understand it, right? Your intellect says, okay, I'm reading the words here. This is what it means. Does it mean this? Does it mean that? And you're trying to understand it with your mind. And that is a gift that God gave us. God said this is a godly wisdom. This is an infinite wisdom, but I am going to clothe it in these words, in these laws, in these stories, so that your finite mind can understand it. But that's not the deepest way that we can connect with the Torah. Because, like we said, the Torah is an infinite wisdom, and it is beyond our intellect. So even though you are connecting to it, and the truth is, there are times when I have learned things where I literally felt, when you say it blew my mind, I really felt like my mind was going to be blown, because it was just so awesome, and it's something that really pushed my intellect. I don't know if you've ever learned something like that. Like you learn to like your head kind of hurts because it's like stretching your brain. But as much as that is awesome, there is a part that is totally beyond the intellect. And you know what? You can connect to that also. If you say, okay, now I'm putting my intellect to the side, I am going to know that I can connect to this because I am a Jew and I have godliness within me. I am going to connect to that. But how do we do that? You can't sit down and study it. You can't try to figure it out. You just need pure, unadulterated joy, because joy breaks all barriers. And once you connect, once you start dancing and you connect to that spiritual aspect of yourself, that's when you're reaching way beyond what all that learning will do. And that's why you dance in a circle. Why don't we have a conga line? Why aren't all the rabbis and all the very smart people in the front? Because they're the ones who learned the most Torah. And then the people who have daf yomi once a day, they're in the middle. And then the people who go to a weekly shir, they get to be in the third section. And then the people who really don't have that many brains, they should be in the back, right? Because these are the people who learned the most Torah. These are the people who learned the less Torah. But the reason why we have a circle is because there's no beginning and there's no end. And everybody in that circle is equal. Because on that level of connecting to Torah, on that level of connecting to its essence and the infinite wisdom of God, every single Jew, no matter how smart they are, no matter how much they learn, or how much they don't learn, they can connect to that on the exact same level. Because when you're talking about infinity, when you're talking about no boundaries, when you're talking about no descriptions, then everybody's the same because it's all part of that oneness. And so it's not like you learned more and I learned less. It's all one. And that's what's the beauty of the circle. And that's also why we encircle our hands around the Torah, because we're kind of like encompassing the whole thing. I didn't learn every single pasuk. I didn't learn every single Rashi. I didn't learn every Rambam. I can't sit down and say I know everything. But you know what? My soul does. And and from an aspect of I'm encompassing it, I'm bringing it close to me. I'm, just embracing it from around. Okay, let's go on to Hanukkah. My favorite Yom Kippur. First of all, I'm not in the kitchen all day cooking. You have to fry some latkes and make some donuts, but you're not making 17 meals for 500 people. But it's also just really nice to sit down and you're not rushing. You don't have to run to shul. You just take the menorah and you light it and everyone gets presents and Hanukkah. Oh, it's just so much fun. Okay, so Hanukkah, just quickly, this is like a theme that goes throughout a lot of our holidays. They tried to kill us. Let's eat, right? Like we're going to celebrate this. How we managed to make such a miserable history so happy, I don't know, is amazing. But Hanukkah is the festival of lights, and we light the candles. Now, if we talk about lighting candles throughout Jewish tradition and Jewish, rituals and everything, we deal a lot with, we light Shabbos candles and we light yahrzeit candles. We're very connected to light and fire, and so I want to just touch on the spiritual aspect for that for a second. Fire is a fascinating thing, and that's why kids are drawn to it. I have kids at home, and it's automatically, from when they're 3 months old, they're like, it's just so, it's captivating, right? It dances, What is it about fire that's so captivating? First of all, everything in this world, is gravitational, right? Whatever I have, whatever's material, if I pick it up, it's going to fall. Fire, no matter how hard you try, it's not going to go down. You can go like this 10 times and put blocks on. It's always going to go up. And the reason why it always goes up is because everything in the material world, its source is in the earth, and fire's source is in the heaven. So it is the most spiritual of the material things. So you can feel it, right? You can see it. Anything else that's spiritual, you can't feel. You can't see. You can smell it. But it has that, like intransient kind of quality that, it's just, it's, as much as you can feel it, you feel the heat, you can't really grasp it. The other amazing thing about it is that every material thing, if you take away from it, or more so, if you give of it, you're going to have less. So if I have $50 and you come to me and you say, I really need to go buy myself a coffee, and I get you $5, now I have $45. Or, if I drive in my car for 3 miles, I'm going to have less gasoline. Or whatever it is, whenever I give or I take away, I'm going to have less. Now you can take one candle and light 500 candles, 5,000 candles, 500,000 candles. It will not diminish that flame in the slightest bit. And what we really need to recognize on Hanukkah is that my spirit, my soul, my essence, no matter how much I give, it will not diminish of who I am. I can give, and this, I have to tell you this personal story. I don't know if I have that much time. I'm hardly saying anything. When I got married, I had my daughter a year and months, a few months change. And then a few months later, I got pregnant with my son. And one morning I woke up. I was very scared to have children because I thought I'd be the most miserable mother in the world. But I live here, and that's what you do. You get married, and you have kids, and if God grants you that, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to give it a shot. And I had this daughter, and she was born, and I took one look at her, and there's my heart. That's it. I cannot love anything else in this world because you have my whole heart, my whole love, I would just wake up every morning and look at her and think like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. I had no eyes for anything. My mother's like, let's go shopping for furniture. Buy whatever you want. I don't care what it looks like. I just want to stare at this baby for the next 20 years. So one morning I woke up 6 months, 7 months later, and I went into a panic. And I called up my sister-in-law in California because she's a kind of spiritual mentor for me. And I started crying to her. I was very hormonal and emotional. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, this poor baby. And she said, what do you mean? I said, this baby that I'm going to have, it's going to have a miserable life. And she said, why? I said, because my whole life is in Leah. Like, she just has everything of me. And I do not have anything left over for that. I mean, he's going to be there, and I'm going to feed him and take him, but he's not going to get, I can't imagine just dividing my love. I cannot imagine this. And I heard about love doesn't divide, it multiplies, but it's a very nice saying. But I know that right now, I love this child so completely, there is nothing else left over. And then you have this kid, and you have the next kid, and I have 6 kids later, and I cannot say I love this. I really can't. Like, I look at this kid, and I have twins now. And someone asked me, do you love one? And it's just so weird because you look at this one, and you're like, oh, and then 2 minutes later, you're holding the other one, and you would die for this other child, but you would die for this child, but you would die. You know, like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. It's like the candle that just doesn't make sense. It really, like mathematically, it doesn't make sense because I'm giving you 100% right now. So what percentage do I have left over for you? I don't have. And the kids don't get it. They think if you're talking to me now, I have this all the time. But I'm talking, and you know, but one day they will, hopefully. They'll recognize it. But that's really what this is about. That, and it's important to take time for yourself. I do sometimes feel like I really have 0% left after, 6 o'clock in the morning with the twins when they both not feeling well. But you wake up the next day and you still have it. No matter what, you still have that. Okay, so Hanukkah, Purim. Let's go because we have 15 minutes left. Okay. Purim is very interesting. Purim was the story of Esther. And Mordechai. It was the time of the Jews were in, where were they? In Persia. And there was this, wicked Haman, and he wanted to destroy the Jews. And Esther was in the palace, and as she was married to the king, and she ended up saving the Jews. Now, the story is just, it's such a great story. But it reads like a book. It really reads like this palace intrigue, and it's very interesting about the story. There's 2 things. First of all, in the Megillah that we read, God's name is not mentioned even once. And also, in order for you to be yotzei with the mitzvah, that means you fulfilled the mitzvah, you have to hear every single word of the Megillah, which is so difficult with a whole bunch of kids in shul. I have to tell you, it is so stressful for me when I have to go from Megillah because you need to make sure that you're going to a place that's kid-friendly. So there's other kids who might make noise, but you also need to make sure that your kids are quiet. So every time I walk out of shul, my husband says, don't tell me. I don't want to hear that you didn't hear it. I don't want to. He's like, just don't talk to me about it. It's just because you have to hear every word, which is very interesting because when you're listening to the Torah, which has God's name, and it might seem, higher up in that, when you're listening in shul on Shabbos, you don't need to hear every word. Every word that you hear is an extra mitzvah. It doesn't mean like, oh, you didn't hear this word, that's it, you're out. So what is it? What's so, it seems to be like, it doesn't even have God's name, and now it's so important, every single solitary syllable I had to hear. So the story of Purim is, if you look at it, there is no splitting of the sea like we have when we leave Egypt, and there is no 8 days of the candle burning. It seems to be, when you put it all together, it's like, oh, we see God's providence. But if you're looking at it, if you just hear one part of the story, okay, so he was looking for a new wife, and here's this beautiful girl, and so he married this girl, and so this guy didn't like the, and the king woke up at night, and he said, oh, why can't I sleep? Something's bothering me. My conscience is bothering me. Oh, Mordechai saved my life and I didn't repay him. All of these things are not supernatural. They're not miracles. They're all things that really could have happened. All together, we happen to save the Jews. And that's why you have to hear every single story, because God is in the details. There is no one big miracle. God came down and smoked the Persians. The sun stayed up. The city walls fell down. Whatever. It was in such a natural way. It was if you look at all the details, if you look at every single, twist and turn, you say, oh, that's why Esther was picked to be the king's wife. And that's why, King Ahasuerus couldn't sleep. But you have to see the whole picture. And that's so important for us to remember in our lives, because there are so many times where we feel like, okay, this was a random thing, that was a random thing, I missed this, I went here, I did that. Every single aspect of our lives, there's providence in it. And I really, this is something that, as I started learning Hasidus, it was one of the most key fundamental parts for me to recognize that no matter what's going on, I have to stop and say, okay, there's a reason for this. There's a purpose for this. This is happening for a specific reason. So I could be very frustrated right now. I could be very stuck right now. I can feel like, oh, why is this happening? And I could either have it pull me down and I can get depressed, or I can start beating myself up, or I could say, okay, what's the purpose to here? Why is this happening? And a lot of times you don't know. And I find that's when I pray the most. I have a very hard time praying. I cannot sit with the sitter like this. It's just not me. My mother could sit with her Tehillim for hours and hours. I can't do it. I don't connect that way. But there are times in my life where I'm like, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on here. And I'm feeling very frustrated. I feel like maybe it's my fault, or I do the Jewish guilt thing. It's great for me. I'm always with that. That's like the first emotion I jump to. But, and a lot of times I say, you know what? I know that there's a purpose. I know that there's a reason to this. Hashem, please just show me the reason. Just in this moment, just let me work through it. I might not see it right now. I might only see it in a week, in a month, or whatever. I know that there's and just saying that prayer, like, refocuses me, and it reconnects me to, like, okay, so now what am I going to do with it? And I don't let it get me down, but okay, so now what am I, because there's a purpose and there's a reason here. Every single detail, and sometimes it's like the stupidest little thing, you got that. You missed the meter by 2 seconds, whatever it is, there's a reason why I got that ticket. There's a reason why my kid is throwing a tantrum in the middle of the supermarket. There's a reason why. There's a purpose here, and I just need to connect to that. And that's also why God's name is not in the Megillah. Because it's not, here I am, this almighty God, and you little inklings, you just, do whatever you want down there. And, I pay attention every once in a while, but I am involved in the details. And not only that, I am hidden. It's not always the splitting of the sea and the falling of the walls and the, not setting of the sun, holding the sun up. It's in these little twists and turns where I can be found. Okay, which brings us to Pesach. Pesach is, in terms of practicality, the hardest. Oh. Okay, let's see. I'm rushing here, so let's see what happens. Maybe we'll spend a little more time on Pesach. Pesach, it's the hardest, physically. People start preparing for Pesach Hanukkah time. I promise you that there are women here who are cleaning for Pesach today. They're doing their storage room. They're doing it is just in terms of actually just preparing the home and then cooking, and you can't use all your ingredients, and you have to bring up the new dish. It really is. It could just give you a headache thinking about it. But on the other hand, there's a certain energy that we can tap into. Oh, I wanted to say this in the beginning, and because I wanted to jump into Rosh Hashanah, I forgot. The holidays that we go through, Purim, Hanukkah, Pesach, we're not just commemorating what happened then. During those days, during the days of Purim, the energy, the spiritual energy that's in the world, that's very prevalent, is that idea of recognizing that God is in the details, recognizing that God is hidden, that when we might not think he's there, that's where he really is. So in Pesach is all about freedom. And because what happened, the Jews were enslaved for 210 years, and then God took them out with a mighty arm, and, with many miracles, he released them from this nation that no slave had ever been freed from. So when we talk about freedom, and it's so important to recognize that there's this energy in the year, that there is this, during these days, there is this energy that we can connect to, because it's such a key component of our lives to be able to connect to this energy of freedom. There are so many things. I don't know about you. I'm speaking for myself. There are so many things in life that constrict us. So be it the way we grew up, the way our parents parented us, who we married, how our relationships stick to who, if we are not married, if we want to, we're not, if what our children are like, what our characteristics are like. So if I have a very bad temper, or if I have very strong materialistic feelings, if I'm a little obsessive compulsive about every little crumb on the floor, if I am, all of these things, if I have jealousy, if I have all of these things hold us back. They don't let us truly be who we want to be. We all have this image of who we are and who we want to be. And, you're all sitting here because you want to fulfill yourself. You want to be the most you can be. You don't want to be less than who you are. You have unlimited potential, and you know that, and you want to tap into that. That's why you're here. That's why you're not, shopping the last minute holiday sales. You're feeding your soul. So, but there are times that we think like, there's no way I can get over this obsessiveness that I have with cleaning my house. Like, I know I should go to a share right now, but my house is so messy, I'm going to clean it again. Or there's no way, my parents raised me in a certain way, or I'm carrying so much baggage from my youth that I cannot, it's literally like a prison. There are times when you feel like I am chained in this emotion. I am chained in this history. I am stuck, and I can't break out of it. And during Pesach, and to me, that's why I think it's physically the hardest holiday to prepare to, because emotionally and spiritually, it's an unbelievable energy for me. I don't know, maybe this is like the wrong way of looking at it, but I feel like I have to grab onto this because this is the energy that I need for the rest of the year, because this is the energy that's really going to let me get to my potential. If I can harness this feeling of freedom, of being able to overcome the things that are holding me back, these boundaries that are holding me back, then I can truly be free. And that's what is so prevalent on Pesach. Now, what is the most, when you think about Pesach, what is the thing that stands out the most? Is the fact that we eat matzah, which is the flatbread, and we don't eat chametz. And it's this whole chametz business. Now, I grew up with it, so I don't even know how crazy it might look to people who didn't grow up with it, but it's really crazy. It's a crazy thing that I have to go to a storeroom that I never even look at the whole year, and I have to empty everything out and vacuum the whole thing because maybe my 2-year-old wandered in with a little sandwich, and God forbid I should have 3 crumbs on the floor in my storeroom. Or I have to buy a whole new set of dishes and a whole new set of cups. Like, what is so terrible about this chametz? And if it's so terrible, why can I eat it the whole year? You have no problem with me eating pizza today, but on Pesach, if you ate pizza during the Beis Hamikdash, you were killed. Like, it's terrible. It's terrible. It's life-shattering. It is just an awful, awful, terrible thing. It's one of the worst things that you could do. It doesn't make sense. So how does it make sense? What does matzah represent and what does chametz represent? Basically, the way that matzah is that it does not have time to rise. And chametz, you can, when I bake my challah every week, the bigger it gets, the happier I am, because then the fluffier it's going to be. So it's really the rising. In order for us to get that true freedom, in order for us to be able to break out of the things that are holding us back, we have to let go. We have to give up on that ego. And this was the second thing. I don't know which one came first or second, but as I started learning Hasidus, this was one of the hardest things for me to connect to. This concept of bittul. This concept of realizing that as infinite and as godly as I am, in the scheme of things, in this, God is this, I'm really nothing. Like, it's not about me. It's about so much more than me. And everything that I want to control and everything that I want to make, perfect and everything, I have to say no. I am giving up on that ego. And the reason why it was so hard for me is because when I started learning Hasidus, the reason why I was learning Hasidus is because I wanted to understand. And I wanted to feel fulfilled. And I wanted to have a meaningful life. And now you're telling me, well, it's really not about you at all, honey. You really are nothing. And the only way you can become a true Hasid is if you say, well, I'm just going to do what's asked of me because that's, and it's not just me. It's really in order for me to truly be, the the most fulfilled Jew, I have to say it's not just about me. It's really, really not about me, and I have to give up on that ego. And it's something that we can take throughout our whole lives. I know, like, in my marriage also, it says something that I've had to work on, because you get married, and when you get married, you want to have the perfect husband, and you want to have the perfect marriage, and you want to have, you want to be loved. And then you realize, well, it's not about me. There's this whole other person, and he wants it. And if you're both about you, and he wants to be loved, and he wants to, it's like that. And the only way that you're going to come like this, if we say, well, it's about we, and I'm going to put this down. And with your kids also, I grew up. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Borough Park. It's a religious community, but it's not a Chabad community. And there's I don't even know if I should go into. There's a lot of large families, and one of the things, it's not a major part of it, but like one of the things that I kind of grew up with is that, I don't even know if you're going to get this, but I'm going to try to explain it. If you ever go to Borough Park, you see it. Everyone like puts their kids, like their 10 kids, in matching clothing.
To where?
It's in Borough Park. If you'll go there, you'll see like 10 kids all in matching shirts. It's just something, and I left Borough because I wanted a little bit more, even though there's a lot of spirituality in other ways. I found my place in Hasidus, but I wanted to connect more to a spiritual level, but I still had this thing in my head of like, they look so cute when they're matching, so I would get the girls matching their outfits like this and the boys like this. And one day my daughter turns to me and says, I don't want to wear what she's wearing. I want to wear my own thing, what I like. And it's just so hard for me to give up that control and say, let her pick. And she's going to look hysterical because she's putting on the orange skirt with the purple top with the turquoise tights. And I'm so into having my kids look so, I want to walk down the street and people say, oh, they look so cute. But it's not about that. It's about whenever you're, through every stage in life, it's about letting go. It's about, of course, I'm not going to let my kid run in the street. I have to parent them. But there are certain things that we want to control about our families, about our homes, about our, and, or even within our jobs, whatever. We have to say, in order for us to really be, fulfilled as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, as a sister, as whatever it is, I have to let go of that ego. I have to let go of what I want. I have to see what's right for this situation. What is the right place? What is the right thing? It's not just about me. It's about letting go. And that's when I can that's when I can break out of the things that are holding me back. The ego is what's holding me back. The ego is going to be the strongest thing that will not let me break out of the things that are holding me back. And that's really what Pesach is about. And I think that's why and the fact that we realize that we need to abolish every single solitary crumb is that we have to realize that when we're getting to that place of no ego, we need to get rid of the ego completely. Now, why do we eat chametz throughout the whole year? Why can I eat pizza and bagels and focaccia or whatever it is throughout the whole year? Because there is a place for me to recognize myself. I am not nothing. I am still the mother of the home, and things are going to run at a certain time. If I say breakfast is at 9 and supper is at 6, you cannot tell me you're having breakfast at 1, because, there is a place for your ego. There is a place for you. You need to have that self-esteem. You need to have that confidence. You need to have, well, I am a person, and there is a place for you. That's why you were given the ego. That's why you do have your ego. That's why you do have all those faults and all those things that might even be holding you back, because they're part of who you are, and you need that in order to live throughout the whole year. But once a year, for those 2 weeks throughout the year, you have to say, okay, I'm going to put my ego to the side, and then I'm going to be able to break out of the freedom, and then I can bring the ego back in slowly and use it in the right way. And that's what we work on between Pesach and Shavuos. We work on all those. Between Pesach and Shavuos is 7 weeks, and it's called Sfiras HaOmer. And we're counting up the days until we get the Torah, which is what we are commemorating on Shavuos, is the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai. So between Pesach and Shavuos, it's not just we're counting the 7 weeks, because that's how much time it took them in order to get to Har Sinai, in order to receive the Torah, but because within us, and I don't know if you've had any other classes on this, but we have 7 attributes. I'm not going to go very into detail, but we have 7 attributes that really are the motivating, life forces in everything that we do. Every action that we have is motivated from either kindness or strength or, beauty, or whatever it is. These are the things that put us through life. So we have these 7 attributes, and within each attribute, they have the other attributes. So there is strength and kindness, and there is kindness and strength. And in order for us to be able to receive the Torah, we have to work through all those 49, because 7 times 7 is 49. We have to work through all those 49 emotions. And that's what's going to bring us to a place where, see, the difference between Pesach and Shavuos is that in Pesach you have to put aside the ego in order to get yourself free. In order to break out of whatever's holding you back, you have to put aside the ego. That's like the emergency. That's like you can't be connected to it at all, because there's no way you're going to be able to break free of it. Then, during the next 7 weeks, you say, okay, I'm going to deal with all these aspects of who I am. I'm going to deal with my feelings of love. I'm going to deal with my feelings of hate. I'm going to deal with my feelings of grandeur. I'm going to deal with all of these emotions in their tiny, minute, myriad aspects, and I'm going to bring who I am, my ego, back into it, but use it, harness it in the right way. And once I accomplish all of that, then I'm ready for the giving of the Torah. Then I can really connect to God's wisdom. Then I'm really, really, really ready to be able to connect to this godly wisdom that I'm going to be getting on Shavuos. So on Shavuos, now we said before on Simchas Torah that we danced with the Torah. Right? We put our arms around it. We embraced it. We recognized that even though that it's a godly wisdom, it's an infinite wisdom, and my finite brain can never get to the essence of it. And that's why we danced around in a circle, because everyone's equal. On Shavuos, no. We open up the Torah and we live all night. We learn all night. We say, don't forget, as much as it sounds so nice, it's of infinite wisdom, and let's just, embrace it. It's not just this beautiful spiritual thing. It is an ethical, moral code. It is a system. It is a guiding light in our life. It is what really drives us as Jewish, as observant Jews. This is what, I don't want to say dictates, because that sounds so negative, but this is what dictates our lives. This is when I wake up in the morning, I wash my hands like this, and I put on my shoes like this, and I get dressed like this, and I eat this food and not that. This is, and I have to recognize that. I cannot just say, oh, it's some beautiful spiritual thing that was given to us. And no, I have to recognize and say, I need to learn this. In order for me to be a Jew in this world with a physical body, I cannot say, oh, I'm just connecting to God on a spiritual level, because I have a physical body, and my physical body needs to be in line with godliness the same way my spirit is in line with God. So I need to know what I'm going to feed my body. I need to know how I'm going to dress my body. I need to know how I'm going to interact with people, on a mundane level. It's going to guide my everyday physical, minute life. And the reason why, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm just going to be spiritual. I'm just going to, in my heart, I'm, the perfect Jew. But why do we need to bring it down into this physical light, into this physical world? Why do we need to bring God into my breakfast? Why do I need to bring God into, the way I wash my hands after the bathroom? Like, why is it so mundane? And why is it so rote? And why is it so, why does God get so hung up on these little details? Why is it so important? Because we are not, our goal is not just the spirit. Because then we would have all just stayed in heaven. There's a reason why God created this world, and there's a reason why he gave us physical bodies, because we need to bring the spiritual into this world. That will be the ultimate. When the physical world itself, in all its physicality, will exude godliness. When we will recognize that every physical aspect has that godliness. And the only way we can do that is by actually practicing the Torah in a very, very physical way. And that's what we start learning on Shavuos. We learn the actual details of the Torah. We're not just dancing with it. We're not just being spiritual. We're saying we're opening it up. We're going to connect to this infinite light, but we're going to bring it down into this very physical world.
Thanks for watching. Click subscribe and hit the notification bell below for daily pearls of Jewish wisdom.